Best of r/malicious compliance episode 68. Subscribe for Reddit videos daily. I, 18F, came into work about a week ago and my boss's boss was there. I work in the food service industry. My hair wasn't very long at all, barely to my collar, and I couldn't put it in a ponytail yet. But my boss's boss informed me that because my hair reached the collar of my shirt I had to either cut it or put it up, which it wasn't long enough to do. It also didn't help that it was layered. For the record, I'd been trying to grow out my hair since a severe head injury caused me to have to get a large portion of my head shaved in January 2019. So being told I had to cut it made me really upset. I made an appointment with my hairdresser, but rather than a warning, I received a write-up. 3 and I'm fired. I got a second today when he came back in and I hadn't gotten a haircut yet because my hairdresser couldn't get me in on short notice. So, I got pissed. I stewed about it all day and decided that the best route would be to get a haircut after work. And I did. I got a mullet. What is a mullet, you may ask? A hybrid between a mohawk and a mullet. Pink and green Lord Farquaad bangs, stiletto sideburns, shaved sides, naturally, and a spiky mohawk ending with a lovely little extended mullet on the bottom that I can tie into a Jedi braid if my boss's boss really wants. It meets dress code now, but it's the ugliest goddamned haircut on the planet. I'll be sure to update tomorrow. Thank you. Next. Working at a country club, being paid almost nothing by hour but having 10% of the client's bill given to me, unless they said they weren't paying it. So despite the absurd workload, I took it. Let me say that these people were loaded, some of the wealthiest folk in the city, spending almost all day eating and drinking while their children would run around or play in the pools. Despite the money, the large majority were nice, really respectful folk, especially the older ones. One fateful sunny Saturday this man comes with his family, let's call him Joe. Joe sits down in the same table as a lot of my regular Saturday clients were, a group of older gentlemen who ordered beer after beer, and lots of special orders from the kitchen. Me, good day sir, may I take your order? Joe, sure, bring me a brand X beer, and some ice cream for the kid. Joe's kid was a young boy around 9 called Billy, who I had seen around the club but never talked to. Joe's wife was Carmen, who just nodded to the husband request, and off I went. Over the course of the next hour or so, every time Billy saw me near him, he would just ask me for another ice cream, or a soda, etc. Due to the club's rules I had to go directly to Joe and ask for him to authorize the boy's request. I was only doing my job, and everyone at the table knew that, using my arrival as an excuse to order more drinks. Joe however was getting pretty angry, and around the 8th time I arrived to talk he grabbed me by the arm. Joe, I'm trying to have a conversation here, what's the deal now? Old man, he's just doing his job Joe, leave the kid. Me, your son wants. Joe, listen, just give him whatever he asks you to get, okay? Just don't bother me again. I look around the take, fuming as Joe let go of me, and see the old man winked at me. Cue malicious compliance. For the rest of the day, whenever the boy asked for anything I would just give it to him and charge Joe's account. It didn't took long for Billy to realize I wasn't going to his dad and his requests became to escalate. What started as a simple ice cream was now being portions and more portions of loaded fries, sodas and probably more sugar than any kid should eat. It was already night when Carmen came to me, asking to close their bill. It was monstrous. Joe tried to argue with me and request for the manager, but the rest of the table reminded him of his demand to me. He was forced by the manager to pay, since there were multiple witnesses to his orders, and Carmen made him upgrade my share to 15% of their bill as an apology. Needless to say, he never treated me rudely again, and the old guys never let him forget that story. Edit, grammar. Edit 2. Since so many people are asking about the final bill, this was nearly 8 years ago so I'm unsure about the total amount. But the combined bill for Joe's drinks and food plus the kid was somewhere around the $400 to $600 mark. And yes, I was tending to other customers as well. Thank you. Next. I have no idea if this really counts as malicious compliance or not, but whatever. For me it does. Retrospectively, when I was younger 13-16 years old, I was very insecure and scared. My parents didn't allow me to remove my body hair, Other girls in my class were bullied if they didn't do that, forced me to wear clothing I didn't want to wear and other things I can't even remember anymore. I basically spent my whole adolescence being ashamed of everything. I desperately tried convincing them to stop doing this. People will make fun of me. They will bully me. They are staring at me. The reply to this was always the same. Other people are unimportant. You shouldn't care about what they are thinking of you. Gradually I started doing whatever I wanted to do in secret, but got caught and yelled at, obviously. Things really started changing in 2017. That was the year when I got my hair cut short. 2018 I moved out, got tattoos, a piercing, have even shorter hair now, wear mostly black. I'm much happier now, but I still see my parents once a month. Which brings me to the malicious compliance part. They aren't happy with the way I dress, with the fact that I'm pierced and tattooed. So they say, what will other people think of you when you walk around like that? You won't get a job, because everyone will be repulsed by your look. To which I reply, other people are unimportant. I don't care about what they are thinking of me. This causes a fight every time, but I honestly don't care anymore. Nothing is more satisfying than finally being able to play the reverse card at your parents' haha. Edit, spelling, thank you, next. Obligatory on mobile warning. This happened to me years ago when I was a wee lad, like 5'7". My dad had gotten mad at me for doing something I wasn't supposed to do and spanked me as my punishment. Little did he know, I was not to blame. I had tried telling him that it was my sister who did it before my swift punishment, but he wouldn't listen. That is until he got in trouble from mom for his wrong justice. He came back to me apologizing for spanking me and told me I could get one free hit on him. Now, what you need to know about me is that I was, and still am to a point, all brain and no brawn. So where did scorned little me decide to take my one free hit? I hit him with my full force right in his family jewels and dropped him. He got up and started yelling about never hitting someone there. My mom came in asking what was wrong as I'm tearing up. My dad explains where I hit him and she breaks out in laughter. You told him he could hit you but never told him where. You should have known better, he's a smart kid. Needless to say, he apologized for yelling and learned to never give me the option for a free shot ever again. Thank you, next. So, I rock up to work this morning, it's 5:20 to 6 and I'm there well before my manager or other colleagues. So, I dust off my laptop and peruse my work emails for the day. I see a snitty piece from a manager, million-mile-an-hour Mick, whom isn't my direct line manager, telling me and others that we don't add enough detail into our day's reports. So, in the spirit of things, I open my laptop, and therein begins my compliance. I start the day by detailing the task briefs, the various permits, the safe systems of work, every piece of paperwork that I have to go through, and there are probably about 30 pages of paper to be read and filled in. I detail it all. Then there's a phone call to the control officer to let me gain access for the day, and my brief to him explaining what I'm meant to be doing for the day. That gets noted down too. And then my manager turns up. Now, he's not the easiest guy to work with, but he's okay. While he doesn't give me the autonomy that I'm used to, previously the arrangement was, if you don't hear from me, the job is completed, and likes to look over my shoulder a lot. He's not too unbearable, and will stick in my court when it comes to health and safety calls. He does accept my daily reports being 1 or 2 brief sentences, something that will let him clear off his tracker, and mark my work as complete. Well, millions had raised my peak, and so I will comply. So, now we detail out everything, from exact number of cable ties used, to every time we perform minor housekeeping. From simple decisions to gland size selection, I have noted it down, explaining in great detail everything I can. While we work, well, I'm not done yet. Now it comes to testing, and our test procedure is laborious compared to most Sparks test specifications. Now I write down how we test cables, down to the core, and when some of your cables are huge multicores, and then detailing writing up the spreadsheet, explaining what is going on there too. You name it, if I've done it, it's been written down. It is certainly wasting my time, but I will comply, and I will comply tomorrow too, and the day after, and at the end, I wrote a little note stating that my day's work could have been completed with two small simple sentences. 1. Installed new cable X12345 and had minor issue SU 1234/5/6. And 2. Successfully tested X12345. I followed it up with the fact that those two simple sentences cleared several managers' task lists, leaving me time to focus on my work, instead of wasting time writing diaries, and that wasting everyone's time is a really unproductive way of dealing business. But if they are going to persist with this nonsense, I will need additional time instead of less time than they have scheduled me for my tasks. I let a colleague know, and he's told me he can't even cope with reading it. It's too long and he bursts into tears every time he tries to read it out. I will wait for tomorrow gleefully. So, the consequence of it was thus: I ended up at the same site as the other manager today and confronted him over his silly bollocks, and I expressed in no uncertain terms that his email was pointless. He admitted that he was getting pressure from on high, and that he thinks I should do what I always did, because I'm in a fairly niche role where my simple statements expressing completion were appropriate, and offered to write my site diary for today by including me in his. My direct manager only called me 17 times today, which actually seems less for some reason, and the general construction manager was polite to me, and didn't give me as hard a time as he usually tries to. And my general no concern given in terms of I know I can walk into other work easily made today a good day. The other manager also let me know that none of the high-end management actually read the diaries, they are just making noise, but the end-paying clients are. So keeping it sensible over my producing an opus of an evening for my chuckles will keep me in their good graces, because I have a reasonably good reputation with them. My peers who have read it have agreed with me openly because our work is standardized, and install XXXX cable pretty much is self-explanatory. In short, go back to what worked before. Thank you. Next. This was 10 years ago, during my freshman year of high school. Midway through the year, our school tightened up a policy on IDs. You now needed an ID to enter and exit the school building during the day. We were allowed out during lunch or free periods. Before, if you needed a new ID, you just bought one for $25 and that was the end of it. Now, they changed the policy so that you would get 5 special detentions if you lose an ID any time after the start of the day. Special detentions, unlike regular detentions, had to be served immediately and consecutively. You could serve regular detentions whenever you wanted as long as you had none by the end of the school year. So special detentions were much worse, especially for the kids that had time-dependent responsibilities like looking after their siblings after school. Getting special detentions was a non-option for most people. You could also get a special detention for stuff that wasn't stupid, like bullying or theft, but losing an ID/getting it stolen was almost never the offender's fault, and they still had to deal with it. You also got 1 detention for each class missed, but that was pretty much the only way to get to regular detention. It was strictly enforced, no more no less. Now, most of the students immediately realized that if they lost their ID while they were outside, lunch started at 4th period, and there were 9 periods, there's no reason to go back to school because they'll get in more trouble. I lost my ID once and just left school and headed home. But another day my friend had his wallet stolen while he was outside and he had nothing to do, so he just spent the day in the courtyard. Made sure to knock on and wave in the window of a class he was forced to miss and emailed the teacher from his phone to tell her what happened. The teacher was completely understanding and didn't punish him further for that. I don't know the full extent of these things happening, but the school quietly changed the policy over a year later. TL. Doctor. Students quickly rationalized choosing the better but less academically positive option. This did happen, and it's no less crazy than the other stories on this sub, so no idea why people don't believe it. The school had some other bad policies, but this is the worst I remember. Thank you. Next. TLDR at the bottom. I was hired to provide data analytics and led process improvement efforts for a government healthcare organization that is not well known for process improvement. Given the lack of interest in improvement from the clinic manager, I was soon assigned tasks not remotely related to my job description. Specifically, I was assigned to work at the front desk answering phone calls, checking in patients and, of course, working incoming faxes. Though several meetings were held clearly establishing I was not to be assigned front desk duties, I continued to be asked to help out and be a team player by the clinic manager. I didn't object to helping out when my tasks were complete, but this became a sore spot for about 6 months until my manager threatened to fire me if I raised any further complaints up the chain of command. Though I knew this was wrong, I was planning to start a family and was intimidated into compliance for fear of losing my livelihood. This office was full of the worst kind of petty drama, and I had made an enemy from the early days when I had the ability to refuse to work the front desk. Now, I was working beside her full time and she was out for blood. As a socially awkward introvert, I was well suited to the analytical work of my official job role but was not at all suited for the frequent, brief interactions associated with my new duties. I started each day stressed out and anxious for the work ahead, but I honestly did my best and intentionally kept busy to keep the anxiety-fueled dread at bay. Apparently I was not doing enough, though. A clinic meeting was called with all the clinic staff and providers where a third front desk staff member and I were called out by our manager for not helping with enough faxes at the front desk. I looked over at my nemesis and she had this smug grin on her face. Clearly she had instigated this. Once I realized what was happening, I raised my hand in an effort to speak. "What is it?" my manager tersely asked. "If there is an issue with my performance, I would prefer to have that discussion one-on-one rather than in front of the entire clinic," I calmly objected. "We would prefer you did your job," she replied. I'm not one to stir things up, but I was already uneasy with this very public ambush and was now seeing red after that comment, so I retorted, "I would prefer to be doing the job I was hired for." 2. The solution to this manufactured problem was that my co-worker and I, not the instigator, of course, put our initials on any faxes we work. This would have zero practical effect, mind you, as the faxes get distributed to different providers and are never collected afterward. It felt like an odd sort of punishment, like writing "I will not 500x" on a chalkboard. My response was to write the following on every fax I received: "This fax is provided to you courtesy of my full name. I prepared and delivered this fax on long form data time. Please know this is not an official job function of mine, though I am happy to help. If there are any other tasks you'd like me to complete that are not in my job description, please contact me at extension." I think my nemesis and manager thought I'd grow tired of this, but I rather enjoyed it. The phone would ring and I would tell my nemesis, "Sorry, I need to be sure to sign this fax, I'm working, so you're going to have to get that." "What's that?" "A patient needs to be checked in." "Sorry, working a fax." My manager called me into her office a couple of weeks later to complete a coaching statement for my subversive behavior. On my form, I raised my objections that 1. My deficient performance was related to a task that is not an official function of mine, and 2. The deficiency resulted from direction from my manager to complete the task contrary to existing procedures. This was the government, so of course there was a documented procedure in place. She submitted the form, undeterred by my objections. Several weeks later, I was informed by HR they were rejecting the coaching based on my objections and it would not become a part of my public service record. Elated, I stopped signing my faxes. Unfortunately, it would be another year before my manager was forced to resign for refusing to grant me FMLA leave for the birth of my son because, according to her, men shouldn't be allowed to take time off for the birth of a child. But that's a story for another day. TLDR, hired for an analytics job but forced to work at a clinic's front desk instead. Falsely accused of not working enough faxes and reprimanded during a clinic meeting. Instructed to initial my faxes, but signed them with excessive information instead. Formally reprimanded but corrective action rejected by HR as it was not an official function of mine and the instructions deviated from existing procedures.